What's up, Degens? It's halftime of TNF, and my apologies to any New England +5 bettors out there for that field goal. You know what that means. This is over Underdogs. This is a show where we pick player props on Underdog Fantasies PickEm. If you want to play along with us, promo code nonsense for a nice little bonus. As per usual, I'm your host, Mason Cameron, at PFF_Mace on Twitter. And with me, as always, my partner in crime, Vishaal Gupta. Vish, how are you doing, buddy? I am in shambles right now from this score, and I know you're a little bit in shambles over Josh Allen's performance. We need him to not throw so many interceptions for your prospects for our dynasty league here, because you know we're rooting for you. You win, I win.
Right.
But otherwise, how are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. Excited for the show tonight. I think this is still a pretty entertaining game overall. But yeah, Josh Allen, stop fumbling the ball, stop throwing dangerous passes. You're better than that. Let's pick it up.
You hear that, Josh? We're talking to you, buddy. I know you're watching this at halftime, just like all the people at home in the locker room. And of course, joining us again, IN betting writer Vaughn Moore at VMoore1724 on Twitter. It's good to have you back, Vaughn. How are you doing tonight?
Good. It's making me realize I gotta either stream it on Twitch or pay for Amazon because the streaming thing's not working.
Yeah, definitely. You know, as much of a slapdick Bezos is, at least I can get it for free on Twitch. Like that's the smartest thing they did. I mean, you have to sit through like the most obnoxious number of commercials ever, but it is what it is.
And they probably have like guys hired to try and find these websites.
Yeah.
Or maybe I don't know.
No, they do. I'm sure they do. But some of those guys out there are pretty good at their jobs, and we're not going to get too deep into that right now here. But anyway, so we have a little bit of actually we don't really have any housekeeping to do because we did it over on Locked In last week because we did the Thanksgiving slate last week. But here is a refresher of where we stand through the season. We are getting some money. And of course, you know, we play all of our cards with PickEm Insurance. It's a great way to hedge your entry for anybody that does not know. When you turn insurance on, your potential payouts will be slightly reduced, but you can still win money even if you miss a pick. And so we're doing that on all of them. As you can see, V has 9 wins with insurance. That means we are cashing nearly every single week. You love to see it. And we're hitting right back into it this week, boys. We have some burners on the slate this week. It's going to be another good week. V, why don't you run everybody through your card first here?
All right, let's get started with Garrett Wilson, higher than 58.5 receiving yards. This is all about the legendary Mike White coming in and saving the Jets season. This is a legit quarterback. And, you know, by legit quarterback, I mean a startable quarterback for the New York Jets. That's what this means. He can actually get his receivers the ball. Wilson had a monster day last week, 5 catches for 95 yards on 8 targets last week. Now he's going up against a Minnesota defense that gives up the most passing yards per game in the league. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. It should be a very entertaining game. I mean, it's a small sample size, but even going back to last year, we've seen Mike White is pretty legit, especially if he's playing against, you know, below-average defenses, which is still a concern for Minnesota. So I think it's a big day for the Jets in general and definitely should be a good day for Garrett Wilson. Next up, George Pickens, higher than 47.5 receiving yards. He's gone higher than this number in 4 out of the 6 games that Kenny Pickett has started and finished. So they have a really good connection going on so far this season. And now they're going up against an Atlanta secondary that also stinks. They give up the 5th most passing yards per game. I think, you know, this is a low number. That's why I really like this one. I'm not sure why it's down at 47.5. I think this should be closer to like 55 or something. I think their connection is just good enough where even if Pickens only gets 3 or 4 catches, he catches them so far down the field that he shouldn't have too much trouble going higher than 47.5 receiving yards. And finally, I have Brandon Ayuk, higher than 54.5 receiving yards. He's gone higher than this number in 6 out of his last 7 games. He's kind of become their primary down the field pass catcher because, you know, we all know Debo and Christian McCaffrey are kind of, they catch the ball close to the line of scrimmage, so they have a lot of volume, but they don't get a lot of yards, whereas Ayuk is much more down the field. So he only needs a handful of catches to go higher than this number, and he has a great connection with Jimmy G right now. And just like these other defenses that we've talked about, Miami is not great against the pass. They're a little better than these other two teams that give up the 11th most passing yards per game, but their defense is still the weakness on this team overall. If anything's going to slow them down come playoff time, it's going to be their defense. So I think this is going to be another high-scoring game for both teams. I really like Ayuk higher than 54.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, I completely agree there. And how long are they going to keep giving us these Jets lines like this? It just doesn't make any sense. Mike White is the man on fire right now.
No.
We went from 77 total yards passing from Zach Wilson to a massive, 315 in his first outing of the year?
Ridiculous.
He is a madman. Put him in the Hall of Fame already. You love to see it. And that's all I got to say about the situation. I don't want to talk it up too much because they're going to start jacking up the Jets lines on us. But anywho, Vaughn, we have another great card from you here. Why don't you run the people through what you're picking this week?
So Trevor Lawrence, I guess I'll start with higher than 1.5 passing touchdowns. Lawrence, a.k.a. Goldilocks, which is what I call him, just had the best game of his career against the Ravens, including an excellent game-winning drive at the end. I see Doug Peterson drawing up a pass-happy game plan for Goldilocks against the Lions' pass defense that is still mediocre at best, especially with Travis Etienne being banged up. Even though I see Detroit ultimately winning the game, I expect Goldilocks to keep the momentum going with multiple passing touchdowns this week. Young Ho Koo higher than 1.5 field goals. The Young Ho has connected on 2 field goals in each of the past 2 games, and I don't see that being any different against the Steelers. Atlanta's offense is as mediocre as it gets and one-dimensional, but they aren't bad enough that they won't be able to move the ball on some drives. The Steelers actually have a solid run defense that's capable of keeping Patterson and Tyler Algier out of the end zone. So I expect the Falcons to take multiple field goal attempts in this game, and I trust the Young Ho to come through in the end. And my third one, and definitely the safest one on my list, Nick Chubb higher than 91.5 rushing yards. What a coincidence that Deshaun Watson's first game just so happens to be against the Texans in Houston.
Wasn't planned at all.
Right. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but I find it hard to believe that was an accident. It is literally the only way to get anyone to watch Texans game right now. While the Texans and their fans are going to be hyper-focused on Watson, Nick Chubb will be quietly dominating their epically terrible run defense. I've had lots of success betting on RB1s playing the Texans this season, and Chubb is one of the best in the league. Stefanski is going to want to ease Watson in after, he hasn't played for basically 2 years, so I expect them to pound the rock with Chubb.
And you know what, Vaughn? I don't appreciate you subtly taking V's side on our NFL versus piece with your analysis on Atlanta. I don't appreciate that, and I will remember it, my friend. No, I'm just kidding. But for anybody that doesn't know, V and I definitely write the best piece on the internet, the best betting piece on the internet. NFL Versus comes out every Wednesday. You're going to want to go check it out. We are definitely highlighting the Pittsburgh-Atlanta game this week, which I know might seem a little strange, but there is so much value to be had there, not only just on the things that we argue about in the piece, but definitely all up and down the board. So you're definitely going to want to take a look at that one because we're picking out all sorts of winners from that game. But on to my card here. And I have a couple of nice ones that I was super surprised to find. So for starters, I'm going off with Kenny Walker higher than 12.5 receiving yards. So the Rams are going to be without Aaron Donald. And I wrote that little tidbit before when I was really more interested in his rushing line. But when I looked into it a little bit more, it makes so much sense that he is also a receiving threat. This team does try to get him involved. He's had 8 targets a couple of weeks ago. He only had 1 this past week, but I think you can kind of chalk that up to game flow. And I don't think that this game is going to flow anything like that last game did. The Rams allow the 11th most receiving yards to back. So bottom third of the league. They've allowed 13 backs to go over this line. It's because it's such a small line. And they allowed a back to surpass this projection in all but 2 games this season. Last week, they allowed KC to have 3 backs that exceeded this number. So Kenny Walker has also gone higher than this number in all but 2 games since taking over as a starter. Even last week when he only had 1 target and 1 reception, he had 13 receiving yards. So it only makes sense that this is a nice little lock here. The Rams are on fire right now. We can talk about Aaron Donald missing the first game of his career due to injury, but anybody that doesn't have their head in their ass understands that he's missing this game because they have nothing going for them. There's no reason for him to be playing right now and risking injury in his contract for a team that is going to finish with 3 wins. They're going to lose out. I don't see them getting a win anywhere else, and it only makes sense that we're going to take advantage of this with Kenny Walker. You could attack it in a number of ways, and I would definitely agree with it. I just think that this 12.5 receiving is probably going to be the easiest to take a hold of. So the second pick we head into is another head scratcher I didn't really understand. I get that on the surface this looks like a big number, but we're going with Josh Jacobs higher than 121.5 rushing plus receiving yards. And yes, I am picking on both LA teams this week. Get bent, California. You have nothing on me. Josh Jacobs is on absolute fire, and that hurts me to say as he is the Raiders running back. 569 all-purpose yards over the last 3. 416 on the ground with 3 scores over the same period. He erupted last week for over 300 all-purpose versus the Hawks on the road. And now he's facing the most porous Chargers run defense. I mean, we talk about it almost weekly. Teams are gashing them left and right. They've allowed the most yards per carry this season, the 3rd most yards to backs in the NFL. And they've allowed a 100-yard rusher in each of the last 2. And not only that, they've allowed 6 backs to go over 100 yards rushing this season. If you're telling me that we have 100 yards rushing pretty much in the bag, you don't really have to get much more to get over this threshold. They've allowed this in just rushing yardage to a number of backs too this year. Hey, this defense might have held Josh Jacobs to under 75 total yards in their first matchup of the year in week 1. But that was a long time ago. This is a different Raiders offense, and it's a completely different Chargers defense. So I am loving the higher here. It only makes sense. And last but certainly not least is going to be Devontae Smith lower than 60.5 receiving yards. Now, truth be told, I actually was mulling over the idea of A.J. Brown, but, I kind of like the Devontae Smith one here. And I know we don't want to talk about it, but something's wrong with the Eagles. The Eagles are struggling. They are just treading water right now. And one of the things that they are not doing that well, it's really hard to kind of put your finger on exactly what's wrong, but one of the things they are not doing that well recently is their passing game. It's just not that potent. They've only averaged 160 yards passing over the last 3. Nowhere near enough volume to support a pair of wide receivers like Smith and A.J. Brown. Each have failed to surpass this projection in all but a single game since their week 7 bye. They're just not throwing it around like they were prior to the bye week. And the added revenge factor of A.J. Brown playing his former team should command a ton of attention from his quarterback. He's probably going to get peppered with targets, which is just an added factor in fading Smith, specifically this week. On paper, Tennessee doesn't exactly have the most stellar defense, but as we've discussed in previous shows, they are playing much improved ball, especially in the secondary. They're only allowing 243 yards passing over their last 3, and those are just some better offenses. I think that this one only makes sense. I mean, he's probably going to come away with 20 yards like he has, 3 of the last 5 weeks anyway. So, I mean, what are we really talking about here? But so that does it for my card of the week. And now we head into the locks. And we're going to make it quick because I always bleed into the second half, and I want to get you guys back over there. So we are starting off with Vaughn. I see you're right at the top. Tell us what you're taking Nick Chubb higher than 91.5 rushing yards here.
Yeah, I mean, everyone and their mother could rush for 100 yards against the Texans right now. Like, seriously. And look, all I'll say is, while everyone's distracted by the Watson drama, Chubb is going to be tiptoeing his way to the end zone, and later the massage parlor.
Wow. And I think we have to delete the VOD now. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, I like it. I think that that's definitely a shoe in there. Everybody beats the heck out of the Texans. They have just been getting devoured on the ground. They are a dumpster fire right now. V, I see we're going back to the well here with Garrett Wilson higher than 58.5 receiving yards. Tell us why you're loving on this one.
Yeah, just got to lock this one up. I'm a believer in Mike White. I think if he continues playing well, it's going to be a very interesting storyline in the offseason with the Jets, but I think he can do it. I believe in him. And again, this is just not a good enough Minnesota defense to kind of make him work harder than he needs to do. I think when he faces, the Bills again in a couple of weeks or the Patriots again, we'll see, how good he actually is. But this Minnesota defense, not good. Should be an easy day for that offense. Give me the higher for Garrett Wilson.
I love it. And V, you're so good about going back to the well and just pulling out these winners. We're going to be riding Garrett Wilson for a while. I can feel it.
Yep.
And then for myself here, I'm going to be locking up Josh Jacobs higher than 121.5 rushing and receiving. Like we just talked about with Houston, everybody is gashing them. Everybody is gashing the Chargers as well. So it only makes sense that we are going to fall in line here and probably follow them through the rest of the season and take advantage of every back that plays them. And Josh Jacobs is going to be one of the premier backs, at least in recent weeks, that they will face. This just makes way too much sense for me. I am going higher than 121.5 rushing and receiving. So, boys, that about does it. I can smell the money already. I'm super excited to see this week play out. I know that we've got some winners in the bank. We're back same time next week, halftime of TNF. Also, locked in tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. So you don't want to miss that. Check out everybody's stuff over on the website, importantnonsense.com, though. That's where you can find all of Vaughn's stuff, all of mine and V stuff. Like I just said, NFL Versus, best piece on the internet. You definitely want to go read it. And go join our Patreon to actually get access to all of those and our Discord so you can yell at us and get extra picks. We love picking winners for people. So come in, show us your tickets, show us your winners. We love showing everybody off. So, definitely want to get in on that. And last but certainly not least, shop.importantnonsense.com. People, there is still time to get your ugly Christmas sweaters from importantnonsense.com. All the gifts you need are over there for all of your loved ones. Show them that you love them the most by gifting them fantasy football knowledge. And now that about does it. V, do you have any parting words for the people at home?
You covered most of it, but again, come hang out with us again tomorrow night. Should be a fun one. We'll cover the rest of the slate for this weekend.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. Everybody be there or be square. Vaughn, do you have any parting words for the people at home?
Ready to get going with the second half. I mean, hey, I'm a Bills fan. I got to stream going again.
Yeah, we appreciate you. We appreciate you, sacrificing your time. We'll let you go watch your Bills. And everybody, until next week, good night. Good luck.
Good.